Hey, anybody out there? Yes, I'm great for opening lines. Just wanted to say hello, welcome to Towers Take on Facebook Live, and I am here to bring you answer your questions about all things Georgia athletics. Um, so let me know your questions. I just really am sort of just scooting into my seat for the night. You know, the Georgia basketball team just now wrapped up their Southeastern Conference tournament appearance. Second round, they defeat Missouri Tigers, playing at home in St. Louis, 62-60 in the SEC tournament. So that's 2 wins for the Georgia Bulldogs now in the SEC tournament. They are now 18-14 on the season. Pretty impressive win, too, over Missouri, playing basically at home in St. Louis, and with all the pressure it's on Georgia with the home crowd. Georgia having played the previous night. And once again, Yante Mayton is a force to be reckoned with. Let's see what he had. Is that right? Is that the correct? Let's see, 14 points and 5 rebounds. Is that right? I thought he had more than that. I'm sure he had 21 points. So whatever I printed out here is incorrect. That's disappointing. Anyway, I'm pretty sure he had 21 points. He went 0 for 4. Unfortunately, kind of down the stretch when everything was on the line, Georgia was 0 for 5 after having a late lead and really just about blew it again. Not to say anything negative about their effort. That was no small thing. Just getting a lead and being able to win in that type of environment is a big deal. I'm trying to pull up your comments now. Let's see if we can get them here. Let's see. Here we go. Now we've got them going with you. And Chris Radford, and I figured this would be a question pretty quick, is among the people asking, does Georgia have any chance of going to the dance? Now, I happen to believe that they have to win to get the automatic berth from the SEC tournament to get in. But, crazier things have happened. Now they got Kentucky in the next round. If you beat Kentucky and make it into the semifinals, that's going to give you 18 wins. And, the thing that's so different this year is this Q1 and Q2, measurement that they're using for the NCAA tournament. Georgia has 8 combined Q1 and Q2 wins. That was going into the tournament. So I don't know whether that qualifies as another one. I would imagine it probably does. And that was better, according to Mike Mobley, their esteemed sports information director for Georgia basketball. Says that 43 teams that were ranked ahead of them in RPI. That's more than 43 teams. It's supposed to be an important measurement, an important metric for the tournament. So, yes, they could absolutely get to the tournament. But I do believe, hello, Carlos. Carlos Cardozo is back here. Trip Davidson. Got a lot of people with greetings here. I'm sorry I've been slow on the greetings today. But, yeah, great game by the Dawgs. A lot of wonderful moments in it. I thought it was fantastic. The way Yante Mayton grabs the clipboard late in the game and starts. Well, he didn't draw up a play. I heard Mark Fox talk about it. Yeah, 21 points and 10 rebounds. Mark LeBlanc is informing me from the office, and Mayton grabs the board and just talked about a switch that they needed to be doing up on the top of the key when they were coming down, and Yante. 21 points and 10 rebounds. Once again, just a fantastic effort by that guy. And kind of this is a side conversation. I don't know how close you guys have paid attention, and I'll get to your questions here in a minute. Jennifer Wheat Rucker says, I'm sorry for laughing. I hear the equestrian team is supposed to be really strong this year. They're strong every year. But talking about Yante Maton, you know, he was obviously the Associated Press Player of the Year, and deservedly so for sure. Interesting though, Grant Williams of Tennessee was named Player of the Year by the coaches, and that just perplexes me to no end. Grant Williams is a good player, mind you, a very good player, but you know, he just he doesn't compare to Yante Maton. Just, you know, a quick comparison: Yante Maton 19.5 points a game, 8.7 rebounds a game. Also leads, or is among the leaders in the league in blocks. Grant Williams, a smaller power forward, 15.6 points and 5.8 rebounds. And head to head, you know, Yante Maton pretty much dominated him. I mean, Grant Williams had 22 points and 3 rebounds in the Tennessee win. Yante had 18 and 9 that game, but Grant Williams fouled out of both contests, and he had 5 points and 4 rebounds in the loss to Georgia in Knoxville. So, well, I don't know what the coaches were thinking there. Obviously, they have different agendas. That's probably the problem. Coaches always have agendas, or their sports information directors who do most of the picking on that. But anyway, 62-60, big win over Georgia. So they beat Vanderbilt 78-62. Then they advance. I believe they were 12 seed and Vandy was 14 maybe, or 13. 13, I think. Then Georgia advances, takes on the 5 seed. Missouri got down 10-0 to start. Retook the lead at 12-10 and then never trailed the rest of the game. So that was a very, very impressive win. And now they face Kentucky. So, you know, who knows? I mean, the thing about Kentucky, they tend to play great in tournament games, but this team, if anybody's paid any attention, is certainly not great at the level of most Kentucky teams that we are used to. And so, you know, that's kind of my lead in. You know, there's not much going on in football tangible at the moment. I mean, we had some great letters that ran on Dog Nation. If you haven't seen them, you should go there and read them. Letters from Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Roquan Smith to the Georgia fans, to Dog Nation. They're doing this in advance of the Dog Nation Appreciation Night, which is March 15th at the Coca-Cola Roxbury in Battery Park in Atlanta. If you haven't gotten your tickets already, you need to get them. That is a great event. Also, late additions to that card, as they were, Davin Bellamy is going to be there that night, and Lorenzo Carter, Big Zoe, who just blew up the combine, is going to do a really, really good job. Mark Jacobson says there's a little bit of information on the Dog Nation Appreciation Night, March 15th, and get your tickets. You can go on Dog Nation, and you'll see the certainly you'll see the Dog Nation Appreciation tab. Click on that, and you'll be able to find out about tickets. I'm laughing because Mark Jacobson here says Fire Chip, not Fox. And I get that. I wrote earlier this week. I answered the questions, the many questions that we had in the old mailbag for the question of the day about who might succeed Mark Fox if he's fired. Now, I caught a little bit of grief on social media about doing that because, first off, that Mark Fox hadn't been fired yet. But look, two things. Yeah, I mean, you know, I do believe all indications are Georgia is certainly seriously contemplating a coaching change if Georgia does not get the tournament. And regardless if they do or not, it's just speculation. I said multiple times in that story, it's just speculative. I do think if Georgia somehow makes it into the NCAA tournament, that he would deserve to come back another year. But the thing is, you know, and you say, why would you do that? I mean, just because if he makes it this year, that has been the stated objective for the past 3 years in a row when Georgia's come up short each time. You know, Greg McGarry's been pretty adamant about that being the level at which you needed to get over. Steve Schaffini says he has been fired according to Wikipedia. I assume that's Mark Fox because I'm pretty sure I don't have a Wikipedia file. Though I haven't looked. I haven't Googled myself. But it should be real interesting. Just a second here. Let me grab something, and I'll be back. This will be 10 seconds. Sorry about that. Back with you here. Yeah, so let me get to your questions here. Anything you want to talk about, certainly. Let me see first. Let me just see some thumbs up here. How many people actually watched that game? That was a pretty incredible game. And as if you didn't see it, gosh, Georgia led by. I know I wasn't able to watch it the whole time. I was watching it most of the time. I know Georgia was up by as many as 9 points in the second half, 9 points with 9 minutes to play. Because I remember looking at it and going, "Okay, this has kind of been the script." A lot of people obviously watch that game. That has obviously been the script that Georgia has followed for a long, long time, and this season, and they haven't been able to close the door. Now, I was certainly glad to see Georgia win. Once they got down the stretch, Georgia didn't win because all the great moves they made down the stretch. No offense to Georgia. I'm glad they won. But the bottom line, I mean, they were 0 for 5, I think. They missed free throws. Georgia just, I mean, I'm sure it's mental at this point, but they just absolutely, don't make the plays they need to make down the stretch. Rick Olenek, hopefully you went to get the Ben Cleveland bell. We got Ben Cleveland covered. Ben Cleveland, I saw him the other day, just in passing, looking good. This just in, Ben Cleveland is big. And he played a lot for the Dawgs down the stretch. Played pretty well, as everybody saw in that national championship game against Alabama, whoever it was they played. They did struggle a little bit in the interior offensive line against, Alabama's unbelievable. That had mostly to do with Deron Landry. But Ben did a good job, and he'll be back, as will most of that line, most notably missing, though, Isaiah Wynn, and that's not a small thing. So we'll see what the domino effect on Georgia's line has. I'm looking here, looking at your questions, so be sure and queue them up, and I'll try to get to everyone you have. James Crump says if Georgia does not win the tournament, they are headed to the NIT. I agree with that assessment, just based on, all the quantifications I've seen and everything else. I mean, perhaps Georgia's RPI would increase to the level. I mean, winning 5 games in 5 days is just, is just next to impossible, I would imagine. Somebody will do it sooner or later. Chad Clark says you need a bigger bell for Ben. I do. I have a couple of different ones. Is this a better one for Bill? The problem with that one is that's too much like the Mississippi State cowbell. That is a cowbell there. So I don't think Ben would go for that. And I actually have another one around here somewhere, but you can never have enough bells, basically. Steve Schaffini says, breaking news, Mark Fox's Wikipedia page has been corrected for now. Steve, is that you doing the correcting on there? Good question here. Daniel Holtz wants to know any word on Jacob Eason settling into his new program. No, I haven't really looked, but yeah, you know what? That's something that I'll do. When you come on here, I can promise you get direct feedback. So I'm going to put here, check on Jacob Eason at Washington and see what they're saying about him out there. Now, of course, he's got to sit out the year, so there's not going to be a lot to hear about for him for a year until he's ready to play again. But that's going to be an interesting situation out there. Yeah, no, James, he will not start for Washington next season because he has to sit out. Bill Kibbe wants to know what kind of pizza box is that, Chip? That is a Marcos pizza box. Having me a little Marcos pizza here, and that it doesn't have anything to do with the show at the moment, but I do love Marcos pizza, so having a little bit of that. Let's see. Yeah, Steve Nager. So I mean, let's just dive into the basketball discussion. Too long of a process, Steve Nager says. 9 years, and I guess he's talking about just Mark Fox not being able to get Georgia to the tournament more often. And I listen. I was on a radio show yesterday, I guess it was, and I have never been able to figure out the algorithm, for lack of a better word, that is Georgia basketball. They've had great teams. I've seen pockets of success. Not really any sustained success. I thought Hugh Durham did a really good job. And he did a great job. He was kind of like Mark Fox. And then, I mean, obviously Mark Fox never got into a Final Four. But even when Hugh Durham's teams came under criticism, I mean, they were always competitive. I mean, you never saw Georgia just really at the bottom of the league. They were always in the middle, at least. And then every once in a while would pop up top. That's certainly the way Mark Fox has been, though the 12 seed this year is certainly disappointing, especially in light of all the expectations they had this season. And the bottom line, there's just been too many recruiting misses here of late, and that has hurt them. And obviously this year they didn't get enough out of others around Deontay Maton, the Player of the Year, according to the writers who were right, not according to the coaches who were wrong and picked Grant Williams from Tennessee. He's just not as good as that. Nick Claxton played fantastic in this tournament. Agbaidi, I didn't realize still they were talking about Georgia has 3 left-handers on their team. I did not realize that. I believe it's Agbaidi and Rayshon and Nick Claxton. Mark Fox very animated early in the game, getting on the officials, and then the interesting thing after that was Georgia seemed to get most of the calls. Or certainly they got a fair game from the officials after that, much to the chagrin of the pro-Missouri crowd there. Football-wise, we're not far. We're never far from football, are we, right? We had the Combine this past weekend. Lorenzo Carter, who I just talked about, is joining the cast, for lack of a better way to put it, at Dog Nation Appreciation Night. Just blew up the Combine. Runs a 4.46, actually faster than Chubb and Michelle. Roquan Smith, he did a good job, even though I actually talked to Roquan this week. It was a pulled calf muscle, is why he was only able to run 140, I think he did, and that's all he did there. He did not do anything else. So he ran that 40 in 4.51, I think, or maybe got a 4.51 split. But that's really all Roquan needed to do. I mean, he's going to be a first-round draft pick, and he said he's going to participate in Georgia's Pro Day, which is March 21st. So we're just a couple of weeks away from that, and then spring football practice begins on March 20th. 15 practices, including G-Day, on April 21st. So there's plenty of football coming down the pipe, and Roquan Smith, again, I hope you got a chance to read his letter. They were all good. I saw the funniest tweet from my colleague, Scott Michaud, who works for the Augusta Chronicle, a columnist, when he saw that Sony Michel had written another letter, and this one to Dog Nation people in particular. So what's he running for mayor of Athens? And boy, Sony probably could. All of them, though, very well spoken, and I think it says a lot about Georgia that these guys are able to communicate their thoughts so well. And I guess we'll see whether we hear from Bellamy and Carter in that type of forum. But they're all five supposed to be involved in the Dog Nation Appreciation Night. We're looking forward to that. There's so much going on for that night. I can't even tell you. I'll be there. All your Dog Nation grunts, as it were, we'll all be there. But the main attraction is going to be these five football players who did such a terrific job this past season, giving us all great memories. Classy guys, as Chad Clark points out. Andy Sloan talking about here's Rick Pitino is available. But like I said, I didn't feel great about having to write that. But the fact of the matter is, it's just speculation as to who might be available. Thad Matta is a guy that particularly I like from the standpoint of if Georgia were being the market for a coach, I think Thad Matta would be a good one. Yeah, Tubby Smith, I've heard that a lot. Tubby's 66 now. Would have been really cool to see Tubby come back right after Kentucky, really, because that's a real interesting story. Kind of the story behind the story on Tubby is he really didn't want to leave Georgia because obviously Gigi was playing there, things were going well. They really felt like they were building something, and literally Kentucky was about the only job that he would have left for. But he still, my understanding, talking to Tubby years later, was he still would have considered staying to Georgia. He was waiting to see if Georgia would do anything to match. Now, this is rough, but I think he was getting paid about $1 million a year at Georgia at the time. Kentucky offered him twice that, $2 million a year. There's some people who tell me that he would have stayed for $1.5 million. That would have been a lot of money in 1998. I guess it was 1997. And obviously he went to Kentucky and won a national championship, and everything worked out for him. But not necessarily for Georgia. Georgia went through a rough period a little while after that. First with Jerza, and then they had the Jim Herrick, who was a great coach, as good of a bench coach as I've ever seen. But then there were some problems, and then Georgia's kind of struggled ever since then. Mark Fox done a great job. Really does a good job in tournament situations once you get there. Now he's 0 for 2 in the NCAA tournament, and I think he's got 1 or 2 wins in the NIT, a couple of wins. But this team, they've shown they love their coach and they play hard all the time. That Tennessee game they lost at the end of the year, I can't begin to tell you what a almost impossible situation it was they're facing up there. Even though they were up 4, I think it was, with just over 2 minutes to play, 2.5 minutes or something like that, and then they end up losing by 5, so they got outscored 9-0 to end the game. This one had a lot of the same type of setup, and you were worried about that. Let's see. Steve Nager talking about the 5-star decommitted last week. We'll see what happens with Hagens. Georgia's still recruiting him, but he and his coach and people around him say that they would have stayed. Robert Wolf says he wouldn't love the idea of Tom Crean, but he would take it. Yeah, I think the formula right now, whatever the template in the SEC is, with guys like Rick Barnes and even Bruce Pearl, say what you want about him, and established coaches of that ilk. That the established coaches are the way they're going. A lot of people talk about Jonas Hayes, and he's a great recruiter, but he is completely unproven, as a bench coach, and that would be tough to throw him into this league right now the way that is going. I don't think Georgia would do that. Kyle Love says, we know G-Day isn't going to be a running competition for Justin Fields and Jake Fromm. How do you think Justin Fields is going to pass? That's a great question, and that'll be a very interesting thing to see, not just on G-Day, but in the games leading, in the practices leading up to that. Justin Fields has a great arm. I can tell you that right now. You've seen enough of it in high school games, but particularly in warm-ups and in these camps, he's got a cannon. But throwing it in the situations that he has in high school and in camps is different than what you'll do, under center or even in shotgun at Georgia and all the reads and things that come along with it. But that's what he does best right there. And listen, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying that he's just a running quarterback. That's an element of his game that he brings. And then he will just need to hone the passing game down. He's a big dude, y'all. I mean, he can run the football. He's a big physical guy, and that's something different that he brings in. Now, Fromm, y'all saw him play last season. You don't go to sleep on his legs. He can run the ball too. But Justin Fields is a real dual threat. Almost SEC tailback type. So that brings a whole different element to the equation, and Georgia would certainly be able to utilize that, and I think they will utilize that right away with whatever packages, because they got to get Justin Fields ready to play. He's the only other quarterback, so they're going to get him ready to play, and that will be that. James Crump says his arm's almost as strong as Eason's, and that's a good example, though, right there. Eason had a strong arm, but he wasn't a great thrower because he could never either A, be on target, or B, get the right receiver, make the right read. That's just as much a part of being a good passing quarterback as all the other stuff. In fact of the matter, we don't know that about Justin yet. He could be the greatest ever, or he could be along the lines of Eason, or maybe he's right there in the middle where Fromm is. Deshaun Watson is a good comparison. Watson, I thought, threw the ball great at Clemson, especially his last 2 years. And that's the type of improvement you expect to make. We only have about another minute or so here, so get your questions in. Certainly Fromm's value is accuracy. Accuracy in reading defenses, and throwing a catchable pass, as some of you guys are pointing out here. But I think mainly he's putting the ball where it has to be. The back shoulder throws and such that he's done. Let's see what else. We're getting right there. Seth is in St. Louis right now, along with some SEC country writers, and Mark Bradley's there for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So there'll be a lot to read about the game that just got completed. I think I was just checking a couple of questions here. People love talking about Justin Fields and Jake Fromm, don't they? I do think it'll be a competition in every sense of the word, but I do think that I don't think that Jake Fromm can be unseated in practice. So anything that happens would be based on games or injury or that kind of thing. But they'll get Justin ready to play. John Beckett wants to know, what do you expect from Swift in 2018? I expect Swift will be really good. Blake Hallberg answered it right away. Swift will be unbelievable. I do think it'll be good now. Swift's got something to prove as an every down back, particularly with his ability to run between the tackles. Now, we saw him run between the tackles with some effectiveness, but that's one thing to do it on occasion. It's another thing to do it every down. And I do think Elijah Holyfield is going to do a good job for kind of filling that bill for Georgia, certainly at the beginning as Mr. Inside, and maybe Swift a little bit more outside. And he ran a lot of stuff out of that slot as well. But Georgia has a lot of options there, and we'll see what the young guys can do. So that's kind of it for here. There's plenty to read on the website. Really, really looking forward to Dog Nation Appreciation Night. Not only will we have these great Bulldogs, who want to say thanks and show you appreciation for all your support last year, but we at Dog Nation do as well. Appreciate you coming on here every day onto the website, listening to our podcast and our Facebook Lives. We really do appreciate it. We'd be nothing without you guys. Thank you so much for all the kind words, and thank you even for the mean words. Both of them mean you're paying attention, and I do appreciate that. For Mark and Hannah and everybody back in the office, and for Seth and Jeff Sintel out in the field, and Brandon Adams, who I'm sure you'll tune in to listen to tomorrow. Thanks, everybody from Dog Nation, and I'll see you here next week at 6 o'clock in this forum, and see you on DogNation.com every day.